If you haven't heard about Anchor by Spotify, it's the easiest way to make a podcast with everything that you need all in one place. Let me explain. Anchor has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. When hosting on Anchor, you can distribute your podcast on any listening platform like Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many, many more. It's everything that you need to make a podcast all in one place. And best of all, Anchor is totally free. Download the Anchor app today or go to anchor.fm to get started. Welcome to the Wartime Leadership Podcast, where we explore what spiritual resiliency looks like from different perspectives. We often focus on the physical, emotional, and social areas of resiliency, but too often we neglect the spiritual pillar. Now, this pillar looks different to everyone. We will be exploring what spiritual resiliency looks like in the lives of our guests, who are people from all different walks of life. Today's episode is sponsored by Success Draft, where we help you transform your dreams into drafted plans. Head over to successdraft.com to get started on your future today. This episode's guest is super special for me because today is episode number 25. We have gotten past our first major milestone here at the Wartime Leadership Podcast. And I thought, who better to have but the man who helped me get here. See, the individual today talked to me a lot during a time of life where I was kind of thinking about what's next? What am I going to do beyond here? And Mr. Tripp Bodenheimer, you, sir, helped me overcome that.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on here. It's a huge honor. You did all the work. I remember my 25th episode too. So this is a big deal. This is a really big deal here.
It's a huge milestone to overcome.
Did you tell everybody else though that no one else was able to record for 25? So that's the only reason I ended up getting slot.
I knew I was going to take a hit. On this episode anyway. So, hey, if you're going to go down in flames, bring somebody with you that you like. So.
There you go.
Hey, but seriously, Tripp, you helped me out because I was just kind of trying to contemplate this conversation of spiritual resiliency and how to do it. And I remember when I was going to go to enlisted professional military education instructor course. Man, that is a mouthful.
EPMEIC.
Yeah, EPMEIC. And they said, hey, listen, there's this guy there. His name's Tripp, and he's probably going to mention something about his podcast. Just know he's going to talk about it. And I was like, and that's a bad thing? Like, I don't get this.
Wow.
And then I heard you talk about it, and I understood what they were talking about. It's the passion behind what you talk about. It's the passion of how you explained it. So listen, folks, he's the host of the Shadows podcast, as well as season 2 coming out soon of the Rise from the Shadows podcast. How has that trip been for you, man? Trip, literally Tripp.
Yeah, it's been amazing. It's been dream come true in a way. I have been able to talk to people that I have grown up watching, listening to, and the beauty of the internet. We're able to connect with people. And yeah, the Shadows podcast is something that I started in the middle of the pandemic. Most of us picked up hobbies during that time. And that was something that I was like, you know what, let me dabble in this podcasting a little bit. A friend of ours, Joe Bogdan, has a Llama Lounge, and which, if anybody out there's never heard of the Llama Lounge, that should be at the top of your list of podcasts, even
Absolutely.
over mine. But yeah, I went on there, and then from there I got asked to I did an article for them. Then I got asked to come on there and actually talk about it. And after that, it got that little itch to start my own. And yeah, Shadows podcast has been absolutely amazing. I'm very like theme oriented. I have different themes, keep my audience guessing kind of as the little twists and turns we have, and not to get complacent. And one of which is Rise from the Shadows. And around this time of year, we kick off Rise from the Shadows. And our theme for season 2 is Behind the Mask, where we focus on emotional, spiritual, physical, and social pillars and mindsets that we have, and taking off that mask and seeing the real us. But yeah, it's been incredible journey.
Well, hey, before we get too far into this, let's do 5 simple questions, just softballs, little warm-ups here. What is the best movie of all time?
Let me look around my room.
Yeah, I wish y'all could see this. Like, just the theme of his pod cave is nothing but movies, superheroes.
Give me a genre. Like, what genre are you?
No, best movie of all time, bro.
Just you gotta best movie of all time.
Of all time.
Shawshank Redemption.
Very valid. Yes. Why would you say that that's the best movie of all time?
The story it tells. I mean, it's just incredible story. It's one of those I can watch over and over and over again. It's aged well. It's an incredible movie.
You know, little bit of trivia. You know, whenever he's climbing through the sewer.
Yeah.
Do you know what that's made out of?
No.
Yeah, it was actually made of Hershey syrup.
Really?
Yeah, that's how they got it to look so real. It was actually made of Hershey syrup. They actually had to redo that shot multiple different times because he kept eating it.
Huh.
Which is, yeah, you wouldn't want to see that on the movie, but
I'll throw another one out there. It's not, and it's symbolic. I mean, it's just my daughter loves it too. Beetlejuice.
Don't say it 3 times, man.
Yeah, it's a classic. Beetlejuice. I love it.
All right, I'll go with that. So, what is one thing that Tripp Bodenheimer finds repulsive?
I think everybody to an extent has a level of narcissism, but narcissism that it's not a blind spot to them, and they just accept it for who it is, and they don't care who they irk along the way.
Yeah, you know, it's really interesting asking this question because you get so many different varying degrees of answers to it. And you really tell the people who are invested in leadership or in the EQ world, anything like that, emotional intelligence, and you really see where they are on that level. So that's why I love to ask that question. Yeah. Now, Tripp, do you have any hidden talents or weird talents?
Weird. Hidden or weird talents. I'm not that talented, honestly, the more I think about it. I guess from last class, I drive a stick shift car, which I guess is foreign to most people now. But I do very good impersonations of people, especially people that I know.
Okay.
Well, and it's funny because I'll connect with people through this circle of podcasting, and I'll be like, "Oh, you've connected to," and I'm not gonna say any names. I'm not a snitch, but I'm like, "Oh, you've connected with such and such," and I'll catch myself speaking like them, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I literally thought that was them for a second." So yeah, I like to impersonate people, and I do it at the schoolhouse all the time. So if you've come through the course, one point or another, I've probably impersonated you. Fun fact: our cadre, you think we're top of the totem pole in terms of the PME world. We walk around quoting 80s and 90s wrestlers. So Dusty Rhodes.
Really? Seriously?
Yeah. Macho Man Randy Savage, Hulk Hogan. Yeah.
All right. As long as you don't come in like Billy A with, wearing that uniform and start like shouting D-Generation X and whatnot, then,
No DX. No DX.
I mean, that was more 90s, 2000, so.
We're more child 80s Saturday morning wrestling. We're not Attitude Era 90s.
See, now this is where you insert the, yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
That's where that would come into play. All right, man. So who's your favorite superhero? And I know this one's tough for you because you got so much in that room of yours. So
yeah, easy for me. Batman.
Okay. Yep. Batman. Yeah. Stanley's over there shaking his head because he's like, yep, I know what he's going to say. Yeah.
That's an easy one. I got a question for you. I'm going to flip this on you.
Oh, crud.
Top 3 Batman. Would it be Batman?
Oh,
yeah.
Batman. Okay. First off, Michael Keaton. Gonna be number 1.
Okay. I'm still talking to you.
Number 2. Ooh, man. Oh. Well, I know Val Kilmer's up there somewhere, but he's probably more at a number 3, but it's only because I like him as an actor.
Oh, you're going to say Christian Bale.
Yeah, I was going to go there.
I am Batman.
Yes. But that book series, that adult book series, it was phenomenal. And I think he portrayed the character very, very well that they were trying to do with it. So that darker side. So
yeah, I'm a Kilmer guy.
See, I do like the Val Kilmer. See, we were aligned there. But anyone that says Ben Affleck,
well, that or George Clooney.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like, you find a new friend. We're done. Man, we keep going. We could go on about that for forever. What you know what? And I'm gonna flip one. I'm gonna give you one of your questions that you always ask on your podcast.
I'm not going to answer my own questions.
I'm giving you 2 plane tickets. One is to somewhere that you've already been, and one is to somewhere that you have never been. Where are these 2 plane tickets to? And I know you were stationed in Europe, so I know you got some good ones out there.
Somewhere I would go back to, probably, I could play it easy and go beach and be like, Barcelona, somewhere like that. I would actually go back to Norway.
Okay. Where at specifically?
We were in Oslo, and then we traveled throughout the fjords and actually went kayaking over. Like, I guess there was a Viking ship that we kayaked over. That was, it was right below us. And just kayaking through the fjords was incredible. I can't even put into words how cool that was. But I would definitely go back to Norway. And somewhere I have never been, definitely the Pacific area. I'm thinking Japan. Japan's just always been on my bucket list. Believe it or not, I've been in 13 years. I've never been to Japan. I would love to go there. Or Australia. Australia is a close second.
See, and I've been in for 18 years, and I have wanted Europe and in my career field, like the air transportation, like, it's easy to get Europe. Like, you have to like try not to get Europe. And I've been trying for 18 years. And I remember, like it was yesterday, they're like, hey, so you got orders? And I was like, oh, fantastic. Yes, Europe. And they said, nope, we're going to send you to Guam. What? Like, where is that? Well, I ended up meeting my wife. So
it worked out for you.
It worked out. I'll take it.
It was amazing. And you can hop planes there through Ryanair and go to country for like $10. And it was cool because we had a 3-day weekend or a 4-day weekend. And it was like, you know what? I feel like going to London. Let's go to London.
Who's feeling like Paris? Anybody feeling like Paris? Yeah.
My daughter got to see 27 countries while we were there.
Wow.
So it was absolutely remarkable. My wife has already told me I'm a year out from this assignment ending. And she said, if you can get back to Europe or anywhere overseas, do it. We loved it that much.
We'll come visit. If you need somebody to come help, like put stuff, like build the pod room, I can.
You can co-host with me.
Yes, absolutely. Man, now you got me excited. Hey, Tripp, so we've heard a little bit. You've kind of mentioned the undertones of being in the military and whatnot. Why don't you give us your background? Kind of just take us through where you've been in life, what kind of brought you to where you are now. Just bring us up to date.
My journey is, to me, it's not like super interesting, but I guess everybody says it about their own story. But I've learned through the world of podcasting and through being vulnerable and transparent that don't doubt your own story. It carries a lot of weight. And I grew up, my father was an attorney. He was a defense attorney in North Carolina, and had a happy lifestyle. I was a spoiled little kid. I'm not gonna lie, I was. And my father passed away when I was 11. He had a heart attack right in front of me. And then from there, 5 years later, my sister was murdered. And that was 1998. I was finishing up high school, had 2 years left. I just kind of fizzled out at that point. I fizzled out, just got through, graduated. Didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I was definitely in a rough spot, but I kept it very closed off from any and everybody, including my mom. It was just, I did not have a whole lot of drive. And I just decided to join the military at a very late age. Considering the average, I decided to join when I was 28 years old. And it was scary to take that risk, but I did it. And I'd always been one of those that I didn't really accept uncomfortable situations very well. I would give tons of pushback, or I would just walk away. There were several jobs that I went to, and after like a day or two of working, I'm like, this ain't for me. I'm done. And I'd bounce. But I knew this was a commitment I was going to have to make. And I did it. And I went in saying this was a 4-year gig. I'm a comm guy at heart. So for non-military people out there, I just work on computers and servers. So I did that for 4 years, was about done. I had really bad leadership. I had really bad coworkers in terms of attitudes. And it was also a different time. It was like 2009, 2010. And not all of them, but a lot of them were bad. And they honestly almost drove me into getting out. And someone pulled me aside, told me to give this thing a shot. And, I got orders to Germany. I got notified we were going there. I went there for a total of 6 years, but about halfway through, I got told that I was going to go up for an interview for Airman Leadership School instructor, which you were commandant at. And I didn't want to do it because I knew it required a lot of public speaking. It was something I was afraid to do. And I got good advice from a mentor of mine, took it, best decision I ever made. And then I guess I did good enough to where I got asked to come teach the instructors be the instructor of the instructors. So now I'm at the Enlisted Professional Military Education Instructor course as part of the Barnes Center for Faculty Staff Development and Enrichment. There's no acronym for that either, but I am here now, and we train pretty much all the enlisted professional military education instructors on how to teach. We break down fundamentals of public speaking, questioning techniques, how to facilitate a discussion, a lot of the stuff that goes into podcasting. But married, my daughter Becton, my rock, her and my wife Teresa, they both are, but Becton's my little partner in crime. And they're the most important things in my life. And I have a podcast.
Absolutely. And you have a huge following, and you've actually connected with some really amazing individuals, but I can't see you as being afraid to speak publicly because you're so good at it. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, your eyes.
Once upon a time, I was not. I did a re-enlistment ceremony for someone, and I just choked on stage. Like I was getting like the dry mouth, and I was doing this, and I was looking at that script, and I was like, oh my gosh, this thing is never going to end. And when you feel that heat like rising up to your neck, your ears, and it's just like, oh, this is going bad. And I finished, and it was just, oh my gosh, the aftermath of people coming up to me like, were you okay? Were you crying up there? And around that same time, I think it was maybe like a day or two later, I got asked to go up for an ALS interview. And I just went to an ALS graduation, and there were 300 people there. And I saw the instructors up there talking. And I remember watching them. I'm like, oh, how do they do that? How do they get up there and talk in front of everybody?
Yeah.
But one of my mentors was like, overcome it and get comfortable being uncomfortable. And that has become, as cliche as it kind of is, it's become like a motto of mine. It's just get comfortable being uncomfortable and keep putting yourself in these situations. And now, I mean, I love it when I see people come through the course and I tell them like, look, I could not speak in public. Now I love it. And I jump at the opportunity. I'm like, y'all are going to get there too. Trust me.
And you all have no idea, like the different courses that Tripp teaches. He's doing a bunch of them online all over the country, really actually all over the world, teaching
Yeah.
different courses to people.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know where you get time. It's like you and Chief Bogdan, you and Joe Bogdan. Oh my goodness, like two of the most busy individuals out there that I know, and you're still like daily like looking for opportunity to grow, opportunity
We
to
do a
move
lot of
into
it with
things.
each other.
Yeah, yeah, that is true.
Yeah.
I mean, a huge influence on her. He was actually episode what? I had him episode 3, I believe it was. Great conversation. Just if you ever want to talk about leadership, you look up Joe Bogdan, and man, adjunct professor at multiple different universities now, and just
He's a
incredible.
lottery pick. He's like a lottery pick in the NBA draft. He's like a top 3 pick, because when I started my podcast, he was episode 1. For you, he was 3. I think Hero Front wanted him number 1. He's a lottery pick. He's one of those guys that you look at and you're like, oh yeah, this guy's projected top 3 if he were to leave this year. Yeah, he's good stuff.
Well, and just seeing your passion in the classroom as well, whenever you're instructing instructors, right? You just have a way about it and it's a story, right? Like you have a story that comes out that where you can say, listen, I wasn't always this way, but somebody saw something in me, and now here we are.
Yeah.
So you came in at 28. That had to have been, I came in at 24. So I know what it is to come in a little bit later. When you went through basic training, did they immediately like go, ooh, dorm chief?
No, some guy went through, he was like at a military academy or something before he even got there. And so he became our dorm chief. I was a house mouse, and I was a good house mouse.
Now, just for everyone to know, house mouse is the individual that's really good at cleaning.
Well, my job was I cleaned my TI's office. I actually had a really good relationship with my TI. I really liked my TI. I admired him a lot. I actually watched his retirement ceremony virtually. But yeah, it was awesome. But I didn't tell anybody. I told him my age, but I think there was actually a guy there older than me, so he got called grandpa. But it's crazy to think, like, I was 28 and I was referred to as the old guy, and I'm sitting here 40 now, and I feel younger than ever. But yeah.
And just to disclose, house mouses are no longer a thing in BMT. They're not allowed to clean your office. I just want to make that very perfectly clear.
I heard. That's a shame.
Yes. It's a huge shame that it doesn't happen anymore.
Oh, right.
Yes, it does not. Anyway, so moving on. So coming in at 28, you're going into you're a young, I assume, A1C.
Yeah, my recruiter told me that was a big deal.
It's a big deal. You're going to be coming in as an A1C.
I went back to my work and I'm like, I'm joining, but I'm going to be an airman first class. And they're like, okay.
I'm going to have 2 stripes.
Yeah. You would have thought I was a major the way I was talking to you.
But so you're searching for your way. You're going through stuff. How did you develop your leadership perspective or your style? Like, how did that go, going from a 28-year-old airman first class through your career to now EPMEIC?
Yeah, everybody takes a different path for leadership, and I think to me that's the most intriguing thing about it is there's thousands. That's why there's thousands of books on leadership and thousands of TED Talks and thousands of podcasts, and I mean, like yours and mine. I thought I was a great leader at 28. If you were to ask me, I thought I was. And honestly, I got to Davis-Monthan, and it was not the best leadership experience. Now, there was one person, Sergeant Myers, and Lieutenant Sarte, but Sergeant Myers specifically. This guy was one of the best leaders I've ever seen. There's a reason he went on to become a first sergeant. And he was the one that stood out to me as the great leader. The others, I learned just as much, if not more, from being surrounded by, I hate to use the term toxic leaders, because that's so, I mean, it's kind of overused now, but they just weren't effective at what they were trying to accomplish. Now, they were effective at getting me on the path of, in my opinion, becoming a better leader, because I got to see what I did not want my people to go through. And when I would eventually get into a leadership position, I felt that if I would have come in straight out of excelling as a 2-time server of the year at Red Lobster into boom, you are now running this work center like we all want to do, have your voice heard. I wasn't ready. I wasn't. And even when I got to Spangdahlem, I'd been in 4 years, and that was one of my first tastes of leadership that I had. And I didn't feel like I really knew how to lead in the military properly. I went to Airman Leadership School, and honestly, I had a really good experience there. I came back. I was told as a senior airman, which it's kind of a big deal as a senior airman to get 3 airmen handed to you. And I was given 3 airmen. And
wow, that's huge.
Yeah, but to me, it was a lot of trial and error. I would understand. I was very open to feedback. I told everyone that I rated on, including those I didn't rate on, I was like, I need feedback so I can grow. Feedback is feed forward. And I need that to get better. And I remember one of he was actually the number one. He was the number one guy that I rated on. He was giving me, he sent me a Facebook message and basically just told me like what I meant to him as a supervisor and how I set the bar for every supervisor he'll have the rest of his career. And to me, I was like, wow, that was powerful, because I didn't seek that. It was just, I guess I did it. And, it got a lot of self-evaluating on my end. It's like, what did I do? But it was just, I found myself looking around the work center that I was in, and I just cared for people more than everyone else was letting on. I'm not going to sit here and say that others did not care for the people that they were rating on, but it appeared to me as if I was investing in them more. And I think that was my secret, is that, leadership to me is an investment. It's not chapter 4 of a book. It's not a fancy quote. To me, it is simply investing in people, and you will get a huge return if you do invest in them. And I think some of the worst cases I've ever seen are just people who've whiffed on this person's potential that they have, and you pass on it. And it's like not buying Amazon stock.
Oh yeah.
And then you look at it and you're like, oh my gosh, I should have done that. All these great chiefs, I mean, people like me, you, the Chief Bogdans, Chief Aidens, all these people who are just really, really successful. I'm sure they probably had the same thing. Somebody's passed on them at some point, but then somebody also invested in them. And I mean, the dividends you get back from that is remarkable. And someone told me, quote, I'm going to go Tim Taylor and really butcher this, but it was like, you plant the seeds, but sometimes you're never there to sit in the shade. Wow. And I love that. I love that. But that's a Scott Ferguson. I'll give him a shout out for that
one. Good job on that. Man, that is some deep stuff. And I don't know, everybody on my podcast knows I take notes, and I'm on page 4 right now of notes from you. The thing that hit me was feedback is actually feed forward.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is one place that we botch so much, because when we think that we become a leader, we think that that's our opportunity to step out in front, to do things my way, to give it to the man, because of the way that I was treated when I was a young individual in this organization. But that is such a miscue.
Yeah, I took out the trash. You got to take out the trash. I did this. You got to do this. And I mean, we do it with parenting. I was brought up this way, and I found myself saying it with my daughter. I mean, I've had to grow my leadership philosophy as a parent, and parenting back then is completely different than going to the work center and supervising somebody. A lot of this, it's a lot of the same. A lot of it mirrors itself, but yeah, I think the feedback piece is so undervalued. We say it a lot, but it's not quality feedback. And one of the biggest experiences that I went through was my former commandant. He basically told me, he said, you're going to get feedback from me, but you're also going to give me feedback, and we're going to have a whole session where just you give me feedback. And I was like, oh, okay. Because I talked about it when I did 5 Voices. I was like, the average person has about 10 things in mind that they want to say to you when they're interacting with you. Now, based on how you handle that one, if you're like, come on, give it to me, how it is. Based on that one, that first thing, and they're going to throw a little softball at you first. You can do something as simple as move your eyebrows or change how you're sitting. You can lean back a little bit. You're not getting the other 9. Well, I went in there with that mindset of I'm going to give him 1 or 2, but he was like, not good enough. I need more. And the biggest thing with feedback, don't push back with feedback. Take back out of it.
Wow.
And just accept it and say, okay, all right. Ask questions if you need clarity on something, but just own it. Just own it. And you value that you're asking them for it. You're giving them the forum, the mic. You're giving them the state. Hey, give it to me. And then we sit there and say, yeah, but you don't understand. Yeah, okay, I see you're saying that, but, or sometimes we start attacking them. It's not about them. It's about them giving you that feedback. So I think that's something I hate to say we and make it sound like it's universal, but I think that's something that majority of people need to work on. I still got to work on it.
Oh yeah, every single day, because take ALS, for instance. There are new personalities every single class. There's going to be new. The only factor that is constant is the cadre.
You want to test how good, and this is for all listeners out there too. You want to test how good you are at feedback. Give someone something that could be perceived as negative, and then ask them to give you feedback. Because more times than not, they're going to get a little defensive. It's human instincts. They're going to get a little defensive. And see how you take that and tell them, open invitation. Hey, tell me what you're thinking for real. Now, don't do it with your spouse.
Oh, no.
That will not work out. But to try it at work and really gauge it really tests your EQ. It does. It tests
absolutely.
Emotional intelligence, like how
I have learned so much from the EQ gangster himself, who's another member of the Lima Charlie Network. Because in learning with my son, right? So he came to live with us when he was 11. So later on in life, it was an opportunity where I had to learn how here's my son now who's 11. So his mindset is thinking way different than what I would think a baby would act. So it's just like my baby airman. Like I have to learn how they receive information the same way I have to learn how Stanley receives information and feed it to him in that way. Same concept.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, so let's get to the meat. This podcast was built upon this niche of leadership, but also with a focus on spiritual resiliency. How does Tripp Bodenheimer define spiritual resiliency?
I thought about this one because I really like the concept of wartime leadership. And since you told me, when we first really connected about this and you told me the layout, I was like, this is good, because everybody views spiritual resilience different. And I think it's one of those things kind of like diversity. When you think of diversity, people automatically go to race or gender. When you say spiritual, people automatically go towards religion. For me, I think it's a state of mind. I think it does have a lot to do with, as we just mentioned a moment ago, being emotionally intelligent, being, not being emotionally clueless, as Noble likes to say. And for me, I really had to learn how, what triggers me, what gets me emotionally hijacked, and what I can do to diffuse that. And for me, spiritual resiliency to me is working out. It's reading a book. It's doing things that bring me joy, spending time with my daughter, my wife. There's nothing more I like than I showed you my Nintendo earlier. Yes, I have a blow into the cartridge, beat the snot out of it Nintendo. My daughter and I were playing the OG Zelda the other day. She's been playing Breath of the Wild. Had to introduce her to the gold case.
The gold case,
And,
yes.
yeah. But doing things like that, I don't take those moments for granted. When The Power of Moments, a very good book. I captured those lightnings in a bottle. And, I sat there just smiling. I'm that corny dad who sits there and smiles. And I'm like, this is life right here, enjoying these moments. When I go have a good workout and I do my best thinking in the gym. I recharge, I get in there, I get my mind right. I'm not much of a runner, so I kind of sling some weights around. That's kind of my way of doing it. But, and then also just seeing growth within me. And, there's so many, to me, spiritual resiliency is so interesting because it can go down so many different routes. But it's we always think it's believing in a higher power. I think it's a lot of believing in yourself, believing in what you're capable of, and believing that I can achieve this. I can grow. I can do better. I can, strive for it. I don't have to settle for mediocrity.
When I had Nina on the very beginning, I know.
My sister. Yeah.
Yeah. When I had her on, to her, it was taking a run. The story of her stepson and really the loss there that they experienced. Just going out on a run for her was that spiritual moment, being able to look up into the clouds and see the coloring change to whatever. So it can be about anything.
Another thing I do too, that, I think spiritual resiliency is one of those things that if you do it, some people may look at it and go like, that's odd. People do yoga. People can, go out. I had Penelope Jean Hayes on mine. She talked about how she went out in the woods and would just sit there and have these spiritual moments out in nature, connecting with nature. One of the things I do, honestly, that I love is I want a long car ride with nothing on. No music.
Oh, yeah.
No, and I don't know if that's just my age or what, but like I can get in the car. Some days I get in the car and I'm ready to get into the car and have nothing on, just have silence, and then take that 30-minute drive. And I'm better when I get to my destination because I'll talk to myself. Don't act like y'all don't do that. Everybody talks to themselves. I'll talk to myself. I'll rehearse things. I'll practice things. I will, if I'm having an issue with someone or something, I have that conversation. And it's just like, Noble Gibbons talks about, writing things down and writing a letter to someone, going ape, being able to express yourself, writing those letters, and then not necessarily giving it to someone, but trashing it, burning it, doing whatever, but you've gotten it out of your system. For me, I'm big on that. So if you are my commandant and you have just absolutely irked me, I'm going to get it out of my system in that 20-minute drive. And if I haven't, we got overtime when I drive home. But I'm going to get it out of there some way, shape, or form, as long as it doesn't impact my family or my flight. Those are the two most important things to me.
I can't count how many times I have just gotten into the car and started driving and not even realizing that the radio was off.
Yeah.
It's a peaceful state.
And now you don't look crazy talking in the car because everybody talks. They have you got like this Bluetooth. So sometimes I'll sit at the stoplight and act like I'm talking to my phone, but just so I don't look really crazy.
I could actually see that. And then you forget that the window's down and you're like, oh crap.
Yeah. Then they hear me saying Tripp. They think I'm on the phone with Tripp because I'm speaking third person in the car.
So now that we know how you define it, which is, it's beautiful to hear that. How do you build spiritual resiliency within yourself and your family, your ladies?
So my wife's getting a degree in psychology, which is good and bad.
Oh boy.
Yeah, human psychology. So she watches like everything that anybody, to include myself, does. She's been working on hers. She's on an emotional growth journey as well. So she's been, studying how people tick, what makes them work the way they do. She's very open to feedback as well. My daughter, man, she's leaps and bounds ahead of where I was at 14 years old. And yeah, she does a lot of the same things. She's very self-aware. She understands and can take criticism, and depending on who it comes from, she's kind of at that age where it depends on her trust level with somebody. But for me, I really became enamored with emotional intelligence about a year and a half ago. And I started, I mean, from me doing 5 voices in 5 years, just the way that we work and how we're all programmed different. And, I've never been big on taking personality tests and just using it as a crutch as, well, I am an ENFJ. Wow. Or, I am a blue when it comes to the 4 lenses. I got away from that. And I realized that all those assessments, I'm every single one of those boxes at some point in time. I just got to know when and how and what be self-aware. I've been working on a lot of that because I think those do have values, because I think they're a roadmap as to how you tick in those moments. And I became a student of that because it's a student of us. It's a student of how we and how the people we interact with are ticking too. And tie that in with the emotional intelligence piece. And it's made me look, practicing EQ has really brought down my stress, my anxiety, any little bouts of depression I may find myself sinking into. Being emotionally aware has definitely helped me out. And something too that I think was underrated is your emotional vocabulary.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, Noble talked about that. And he turned me on to it with the emotional wheel, and you can Google it, but it's an incredible tool because you can't tame it if you can't name it, is what he says. And that is caught on like wildfire with the students in the course. And it's just, when you get mad, you're like, oh, I'm so mad. Well, tell me more. I'm angry. What else? I'm pissed off. Okay, your emotional vocabulary is 3 words right now. But in reality, it's about 14. You just don't know it. So I understood that I had the emotional vocabulary of like a 4-year-old, and I needed to work on that too. So now when I get in these situations and I'm frustrated with someone or mad, I can take a step back and realize this is what I'm feeling. Not this is what I think I'm feeling. This is what I know I'm feeling. Right?
Yeah. And that's the difference. That's the difference. Knowing and thinking, 2 completely separate things.
Yeah.
And y'all have heard us talk a lot about Noble. I'm telling you right now, his podcast, EQ Gangster, just look it up. If you have any questions coming out of this, they're going to be answered through his podcast. He is so brilliant when it comes to this stuff. So
Guilty
brilliant.
pleasure of mine. And I'm going to see if any of the Lima Charlie team is listening to this. Nothing better than going to Planet Fitness, sitting in the massage chair, listening to EQ Gangster. I'll leave it at that.
Ooh, nice.
Try it.
I'm going to have to. Yeah. Actually, now I'm going to tell my wife I have to buy that massage chair so I can have it at home.
Or just $10 a month at Planet Fitness.
Yeah, well, or whatever. Or 10 easy payments at. So now we know what it looks like. But I like to put legs to these types of conversations. Where have you experienced a moment when you had to rely solely on that spiritual pillar, when you were going through something and you had to reach deep down inside of you and focus on the spiritual side? I know you've already mentioned a couple of things that for me, I would have been like, oh, there it is. But what's that moment for Tripp?
The one for me, I think I've talked on several podcasts, even my own, about my father passing, my sister passing. But I think for me, the one that really stands out where I had to be spiritually in a good spot was Alan Simmons, who was my stepfather, but the finest man to ever walk face of the earth in terms of just a gentleman, big heart. Oh my gosh. And, just treated my mom like gold. And he came into our life at a time where I was very resistant. It was only, 5 years after my father had passed. We met him. I gave him a little bit of pushback at first, but he never backpedaled. He stood his ground and he was never strict or anything. He was just like, I'm going to love you. I'm going to care for you. And I was that teenager giving him so much pushback. Well, he had complications with the surgery, and he passed away right after I had moved to Germany. So we had not been in Germany that long, and got a phone call at work one day and notified me. It was my mom who notified me that he had passed away. And I remember everything about my dad passing away. Everything. I remember everything about finding out my sister passed away. And when I found out Alan passed away, it was a little bit harder because I was overseas and I was very new to Spangdahlem. I did not know these people like I would have if I had been back at home. And so I kind of felt like we were alone in a way. And my leadership did everything right. It did everything right to get me back home. And American Red Cross, God bless them, I will support that organization for the rest of my life. They got us home really quick. But it was just, I had to be strong for my family. I had to be strong because Becton was really young. Teresa was super heartbroken. I remember having to tell her what had happened, and she was so close to him. I'm telling you, Alan Simmons, anybody were to have met him, he was just, it breaks anybody's heart to even just bring his name up at times because he was just so sweet of a person. And yeah, that was for me, I think, the one moment that I really haven't touched enough on the podcast, but it was still to this day. If I start talking about him for too long, it's hard. It's really hard to do, but had to be in a good spot for me and my family.
Do you think that it might have also been not being able to be close to your mom during that time?
Yeah, we felt hopeless. We felt like we were just over there by ourselves. I could tell when I talked to my mom and my sister and all of our family that, we were, they needed us. And, another one too, because we were just talking about that, was my grandmother. She passed away a couple of years back. I think it was maybe like 4 years ago. But when I was in Germany, I got really, 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 really close to my grandmother to where we were talking several times a week. And it became like a highlight of my week was doing that. And same thing with Alan. We talked a lot. And Alan and my grandmother were the two people in Germany that I constantly stayed in contact with. And she passed away. And when she was dying, I wasn't able to get home. And all my family was there. All my family was there, except for me. And I was so close with her. And that tore me up. That one really, really got me. Really, really got me. So those two, and being in a different country, with all the perks, we were talking at the top of this about Ryanair and traveling and the experience and stuff. There's also some dark sides to it. And those where when things like that happens, you can't just hop in your car and say, well, I'll be there in 30 minutes. It's, I'm a 12-hour flight away. And when she passed away, they did the funeral really quick. And I wasn't able to attend it. And I remember just kind of being like, I felt lost for a while there because the two people that I relied on socially to kind of carry me through a lot of this. Because it wasn't just, everybody's on a different time zone back in the States, and it was just really hard to communicate with people back over here. And they were the two constants, and losing them definitely challenged me spiritually, because that was on top of losing my dad and my sister. So all this stuff starts happening. You start losing people, what feels like right and left. I feel like every 4 years I was losing someone very valuable to me. And you just question a lot when things like that happen.
When the constants aren't constant anymore, that's hurt. Now that had to have drained you significantly. So how did you rebound? How did you come out of that? Like, how did you fill your tank up?
My wife is incredible. She is a huge support system. Becton, I can hang around that kid for 5 minutes and I'm automatically in a better mood. But it was also, my grandmother specifically, I was teaching, and getting in the classroom to me is therapeutic. And I've had some rough spots. PME is tough. I don't think a lot of people understand that PME it requires a lot of time away from family. It's very demanding. But for me to get inside of that classroom and teach was a form of therapy. It was great. It was a way I could escape, because I could get up there and act out and have fun, and feed off of the students, see that they were enjoying it, and that helped me a lot. So definitely all those students out there, I definitely appreciate them, because they probably have no idea which ones were in that class, but they got me through it.
Wow. Yeah. And I think we're always amazed at how much we can handle, but also how much we can't handle, where we see our limitations. As leaders, you don't want to be limited, but as a powerful leader, knowing your limitations is really what pushes the people around us, when they can see it's okay to have those limitations.
Mm-hmm.
So that's deep, man. Thank you, Tripp, so much for coming on here and celebrating this 25th episode. What books would you recommend, or what book would you recommend to our listeners? Because I know that you do this on your podcast, and so I have brought it over here because I think it's important to be able to invest in ourselves just as much. So how are you investing in yourself?
Leaders or readers? For me, I try to read a book once a month, and I have a bad habit right now of picking up like 4 and then not finishing any of them. I will say, for me, in terms of journey, Alchemist is a very good book. But the one that I want to talk about, to me, that is really interesting right now, How to Be Perfect. And as you can see here on the title, I just happen to have it sitting by me. The T is away from the word perfect, but it's written by Michael Schur, Schur, and he's a writer for television, a lot of comedies on TV. But that book is the correct answer to every moral question. And I've become so, I went from my personality assessments, diving deep into those, to diving deep into emotional intelligence. And now the thing that my new pet has become ethics. And it even asks questions like putting a shopping cart up. What do? You see someone not put up a shopping cart. And I tried this for all the career assistance advisors we were training the other day, and it got a heated discussion going. And I'm like, where is it written that you have to put a shopping cart up? But yet we look at people and we're like, jerk. But
yeah, we look down on them.
We do. But who are we to do that? And it really dives deep into ethical dilemmas and challenges your morals, and it puts you in some situations reading it. It's a very entertaining book to read. I will honestly say there's not a chapter that I've read. It does the railroad track. Do you change tracks? It talks about, like I said, the grocery, just so many of those little ethical dilemmas and conundrums. Like, what do you do? And so for me, I like that because it's definitely changed the way I think. With someone cutting me off in traffic, what do we tend to do? Jerk and relay into the horn. And do you know what's going on in their car? Maybe their kid's sick, maybe their dog is throwing up in the car, maybe you don't know. So maybe they just got fired and they're just not clear-headed. So it really makes us realize how much we project our values and our morals onto other people and expect them to reciprocate it. But yeah, good book.
I never thought about that, about maybe, whenever they cut me off, they're affecting me, but am I affecting them?
Now I go outside tomorrow, I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna hit the horn. But
yeah,
now I at least stop and I'm like, was that right? Was I supposed to do that?
And then you do the sorry, you mouth the words. Sorry.
Now when I see you on your phone, now I'm right. Yeah, now I'm right.
Now I'm in the complete right. Hey, we've talked about today, LimaCharlieNetwork.com. You can go there and find some absolutely amazing podcasts, some people that have fed into my life because of the connection through Tripp. They have fed into me in so many different ways, between Joe Bogdan, the EQ Gangster, Llama Leadership, Llama Lounge, just everyone from there has been so vital to pouring into me with the starting of this podcast. And now that we're going, and now that we kind of have legs, they continue to come beside me each and every week, sending me new contacts, introducing me to people. So absolutely amazing. And then theshadowpodcast.com. The Shadows. I actually had that written down too. Dang, theshadowspodcast.com is where you can go to hear Tripp have some amazing conversations with some people. You will be surprised at the type of guests that he pulls in. I mean, I'm not surprised because I know him and I know the kind of conversation, but let me tell you, it's just been a huge blessing. Tripp, do you have any final words for our listeners?
Yeah, first of all, I'll do a little cheap plug. Definitely to piggyback off what you said, head over to theshadowspodcast.com. We're most active on Instagram. So I think it's _shadows podcast on Instagram. Starting to dabble in reels and stuff now. I have a teenage daughter who's like, Dad, you got to start changing up the way you're doing things a little bit. But I wanted to take just a minute to say, I know the time this episode is coming out, you'll probably have to go to the site and dig for it, but I just released an episode on my dad. Today, the day we're recording this, would be my dad's 71st birthday. And it was actually the 100th episode of Shadows as a whole, between Rise From and the Shadows podcast. But I went in storage units, found boxes. I did so much research, and talked to so many people. And I actually was able to chronicle my dad's 42 years that he had on this earth. And it was an incredible story. And it was really cool getting to share that. And I actually recorded it yesterday with one of my fellow cadre members. But and I also share my story about my sister on one of my first couple of episodes. But you've been on there as well. So definitely, any love, support. If you like wartime leadership, I'm sure you'll like ours as well. We've been doing it for 2 years. About the time this one comes out, we're going to be transitioning into our Rise From the Shadows season 2, which those are little like TED Talks, 30 minutes. Try not to exceed 30 minutes, but each one has a powerful message. And it's all about the guest. I barely do any talking on that episode. So we're going to have those coming out until October 31st when we drop a revamped version of the Shadows podcast. But yeah, final comments for listeners out there. Just invest in people. Invest in people. You may have someone that to you, just like we're going back to the whole shopping cart and projecting our feelings on others, just because someone doesn't check the boxes on, what you want or how they make you feel, or they're an inconvenience to you because they're not trained up on something, or they're not, in the know, or not doing how things you want. Let go of control. And, and that was a big thing for me too. Let go of control, invest in people, help other people, allow other people to invest in you and help you. And it can, like I said, the dividends, the returns that you get back from that, far better than almost anything else you can get out there. And knowing that, and question what your legacy is. What are people going to say about you 30 years from now? Are they going to say, oh yeah, that guy, he had the podcast about with the bird and the hat, the shadows thingy? Or are they going to be like, oh yeah, Tripp Bodenheimer, yeah, remarkable guy. So how are you going to be remembered by people? And that's just the biggest thing. Invest in others.
Yeah, absolutely. And hey, listen, folks, go listen to that episode. I listened to it today. I haven't even been able to get all the way through it because of the impact that it had on me. It aligns so much with his story, with his dad, with his sister, with everything. It just aligns so much. And there are so many different points that are made in it that you're going to be taking notes for a really long time. If you want to learn how to love, if you want to learn how to love like beyond borders, that's the episode to listen above any one of them. just because of the relationship between Tripp and his dad and how his dad affected the dad he is today all comes from that. So today's episode is only possible thanks to my friend and producer, G. Frazier with 369sounddesign.com. Jeff, you are truly the hardest working man in the industry because you make me, or attempt each and every week to make me sound really, really good. We are blessed by the entire team here at the Wartime Leadership Podcast. Thank you, Tripp. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for investing in us. And we will see you next time on the Wartime Leadership Podcast. Be blessed.